everybody, good morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Ann, Disembodied Hands, Queenie, Disembodied Beard, John, and I don't know, everybody. All of the chat. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Hey, Gusu, Laura, Zachariah, everybody, Turgeon, Pendrake, all the things, all the people. I'm a little bit sleepy today, but the opposite reason from yesterday. Today, David, let me sleep too late. Because he was late. He hit snooze 4 times. It was insane. Morning. Yeah, been a lot of bad weather stuff hitting our people, Laura. Or, it's good to see you. Sorry, I just got distracted by our umbrella blowing in the wind. I should have lowered it last night. We have an umbrella, a patio umbrella. That is fraught. It is sad. It has already gotten, damaged by wind once. So we're kind of I should have remembered to lower it last night instead of keeping it out where the wind could catch it. But it looks like it's all right. It's just, blowing around a lot. Makes me nervous, right, Papa? She's like, I give up on you. I give up on you, streamer person. All right. We are going to work on the base today. I need to pop her back onto a base. I already stole hers because we're going to be using... her block is already allocated to the half-orc rogue that will be starting after this one is done. We may get to starting her today. We shall see. But first we'll do this base. Alrighty, there we go. Okay, so we did this green stuff last time. We managed to get it done all in one go by rolling out parts of it and fitting it into place. So now we are going to, I wanted to do kind of a black marble, so I am going to start with black, actual black. I'm going to base coat that, and then I'm going to... Or will I? Now I'm second thinking myself because I've got all this detailing I have to highlight. And do I really... You have to ask yourself at those times, is it really the right way to do it? And actually, I think I'll demo something for you guys. Let me demo something. Something I've already talked about. Well, let's demo what carbon gray does when you put a black wash over it. So we're going to do carbon gray instead. It's kind of an ashy color. Yo, Crowley. I used to Pendrake, but they're too tall and I have to fill them with something weighty. They're just so big that it was just too easy for me to knock them over, whereas these little blocks are more it made more sense when the models were metal, because then I could counterweight them by putting stuff inside the bottle. But I still have a couple of big ones, but I don't know, I just prefer the blocks these days. Another thing is I feel like I have a better grip on it. It's not an uncomfortable hold to be holding it like this. I mean, when I have a round thing, I can do that. But I feel like I'm more inclined to hold a block like this anyway. So in that case, I wouldn't really be benefiting from the pill bottle. And these are so inexpensive that, I've got a huge bag of them. Plus, they can double as actual nice miniatures plinths if I want to base something on them, unlike a pill bottle. I'm going to do 4 drops of carbon gray, then a drop of water for our base coat. Carbon gray is built out of the high density black base, so it has a lot of coverage. You don't have to worry about coverage with that color. And actually, the wind blowing in through my window is a little chilly, so I'm going to shut the window a little bit. Yeah, the front come through. So it's a little bit cooler out this weekend. But yeah, for people who don't have the extra money to go out and buy blocks like this, pill bottles are a great holder. I mean, I've used miniature holders too. David actually asked me if I could find my my one we got with the Reaper swag bag that one year. I have no idea where it is. Because I just don't... I've found that I really don't use them. I mean, the nice thing about the Game Envy one is that if you have a bottle cap, you know, if you've got a 2-liter cap, you can just use that. And, you know, you can get a relatively inexpensive supply of additional caps of stuff you're possibly drinking anyway. But the thing is that we don't drink soda in this house, so... he was looking... He wanted an extra cap, and I'm just like, sorry. We just don't ever drink things that have, like, the appropriate size cap for the holder. All right. Base coat. Let's see here. I'll just get my 0 out. Hey. Yeah, it's a fine holder. It's just that I'm always working on too many projects. And the bottle cap thing isn't, like, something that we have in the house, so... So I use blocks, which actually, like I said, I like the fact that I can repurpose the block as an actual plinth by just painting it black, doing some sanding and filling, and then painting it black. Tried and failed again yesterday to get David to look into buying a table saw. Instead, he jigged something up with his... the big saw he's got, which I'm scared of the big saw and I will never use it. And the fact that he's like jury-rigging it with wood guides, I mean, I guess he's clamping everything together to get the cut he wants, but I'm like, wouldn't it just be easier if we bought a table saw? And then I wouldn't be scared of it. Because it wouldn't be too much saw for what we're actually doing. Yeah, the marbles make sense. See, I just don't have anything. Like, I used to use pennies, but now, you know, spare change is, like, not something I have in abundance. And then I was using naughty minis that I didn't like, but now all my minis aren't metal anymore. But yeah, I mean, the bottom line, as always, guys, is use whatever works for you. For me, I love my wood blocks, and I have many of them, so I'm just keep going down that road. That and I don't have, like, I don't have, like, meds like I used to. Well, and so pill bottles are actually pretty much a rarity in this house, only when Kiki gets sick. Yep, aquarium gravel, yep. That would work fine. Also, I'll admit that, like, having a long handle is not really a plus when I'm working on stream. Like, having a short handle, like, I know where the model is, right? I have a long handle. I've got this handle, like, going out past here, and I'm trying to, like, work with that and keep it from making my hand awkward while I'm painting, while I'm trying to keep this guy in camera, right? So in that way also the short ones work for me because of what I do. No, the little saw that just goes into a table, Pendrake. The big round blade is the one that he's using. Hold on. No, we want one of these guys. The one with the little blade. And they really aren't that expensive anymore. right? This is the monster he's got, and I will not touch that thing. This looks like a little one, too, this one that I just looked up. And my phone is like saying, we have no internet, even though it says it's got fine internet. Sometimes our internet is really dumb. Yeah, I also don't like the way it looks, Squindy. I'm with you. I like my little tasteful wood blocks. Seriously? Compact table saw. Yeah, that's what we want. Yeah, it looks like a little guy. It looks like it's tiny. This is exactly what I want. A friendly little saw. With a miter gauge and push stick and everything. Compact size. Yeah, this is what I want. We just needed to cut bases. Like plinths. Like, that's exactly what I want. Not what you think of as a table saw, but it is a table saw. Table saw. I just want the little saw. This little friendly saw, not this giant, whirling, huge toothed blade that's much more punch than we need. Like, honestly, if David won't spend the money on it, I will at this point. Because I don't want to always have to ask him to cut stuff for me. Because sometimes he's just not in the mood or he's just, like, busy with other stuff. Yeah, if you've got a turning, the ability to do turning like that, absolutely will give you a nice round plinth. Various types of wood will be better than others for it, but I mean, it would. You've got the cheapest option there, Gosu. Like, not only can you just like go and cut or pick up wood, but you have the means to do it like right there. So like that is the best option for sure. We have friends who do it, but, you know, the one friend who does really nice work, he just does it for his hobby. So you never want to take advantage of him by asking him. Like, I know people have just hit him up to just do stuff for them in the past, and so he's kind of hesitant now to do it, and I don't blame him. So I'm just looking for a way that I can cut my own plinths. Yeah. Kiki, that's enough. None of it is here. Quiet. Right. Like, I love buying a nice plinth just as much as the next girl, but with the exception of one guy I knew in Tulsa when I used to go to the Tulsa show, that was his plinths were economical. And even then, if you look at what the wood probably cost him and the time probably cost him, it like wasn't that inexpensive. It just depends on whether you have more time than money is what comes down to, right? Paying like $15 for a very nice plinth when you didn't have to buy the wood, have the saw to cut it, you know, spend the time to sand it and then to stain it yourself and then to, you know, seal it yourself, right? Like, it's all like, what do you have more of? I do have a bunch. I have a collection of like just kind of generic plinths that I just, when I go to shows with plinths, I tend to just buy one because then I've got another option. And many times that's actually worked just fine for me, is I'll go dig in my box and find the perfect plinth. But as my box stock dwindles, because we haven't really been going to shows that have plinths for sale, we're more and more turning to making our own. There we go. So there's that. And that actually is a pretty good color. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put a black wash over this. Charcoal gray was formulated specifically so that when you put a black wash over the top, it would give you the appearance of black, like it would be close enough, but still would have some highlights show through from the carbon gray. So it's kind of a quick and dirty black that you can do. So I'm going to take my pure black. If I really wanted this, like, I could do a mixture of blue and brown liner if I really want a transparent coating over this, but I think I'm going to just do the regular black and put some sealer in it and stuff like that. But yeah, for 28mm, honestly, these little 1-inch wood blocks are the perfect plinth. Like, unless you need something round, right? But if you just want a simple plinth and you just mount the model onto this instead of onto the black base like I did, it's very easy, minimal work. Like, seriously, just like sand or fill any little imperfections and then paint it black. And then seal it. Usually I use Reaper brush on sealer to seal it because I like the finish. But you can seal it with anything you want. What am I doing? Pokey tool. Hey, Roger. Thank you. Thank you for the resub. 45 months. You're almost to your 4-year mark. That's pretty cool. Yeah, bigger models are where David and I are usually kind of scrambling to find something that will work. So I'm going to put a drop of pure black down here. And then I'm going to throw 4 drops of sealer into it. My sealer's getting really low. You can tell it's getting low because you can hear the agitator. Right, it's not so much the time for material cost with plinths, Pendrake, it's more the time that you have to spend making your own plinth. It takes time to sand and fill imperfections, and then it takes time to, and of course it's messy to do the staining. And then sanding again, and then maybe staining again, and then maybe sanding again, and then, you know, finally being able to seal the thing. It's just a lot of extra steps. It's much easier to just reach into my box and pull out a beautifully finished plinth that happens to work, you know. But yeah, lately I just haven't found a lot of good plinths, so. And the market for them isn't as big, right? Because only people who are actually painting display miniatures care about them. And these days, though, I mean, a lot of the time, it's just easier for us to 3D print one. Like, David has 3D printed a couple. But then the problem that he runs into is if he needs a very precise size for it, he may end up wasting resin trying to do it trying to take a couple shots at it, at what he needs. Dang it, my sealer is really stubborn today. Right, but nowadays plinths are more expensive than that, Pendrake. That was the one guy in Tulsa who I used to buy from, but he had kind of a little side business doing it for all of his friends who were historical painters and always needed plinths. But nowadays you're paying more than that, so it's not as efficient. Plus, you know, you look at the number of models that David paints in a year, and or the number of models that both of us together are going to paint over the next 10 years, and then the saw suddenly looks very efficient. Like, David finishes at least 6 or 7, I would say 6 and 10 things a year, depending on how much computer games are distracting him. And I finish maybe 2 to 3 things a year. So if you look at it like lifetime and how long the table saw is likely going to last, I mean, David's big round choppy saw that he's got has lasted for years. Years and years and years. I think he's had it over a decade now, and it's never had a problem. All right. So I did 4 drops of brush on sealer, 1 drop of pure black, and 1 drop of water. This gives me this consistency. You can see that you can still see the black, but it's pretty transparent, and as it dries, it gets lighter. So I think this is going to work just fine. It looks really solid here. If I put a puddle out, then it puddles at the original color, black. That's what I need. So where it pools is going to be darker. Now this is going to dry lighter than it looks. Nonetheless, all washes, no matter what, are going to dry lighter than they appear wet. Yeah, and Jacob Jansen at least is he's got some good work. And he also takes feedback. Like, I told him more just plain wood blocks next year and less with the little black, like, trophy thing around the bottom. Because having the wood block be actually centered on the trophy thing is not easy, and I just don't like the look as much. I did buy a couple from him this year, though. All right, I'm going to get a bunch. Washes, remember, you're putting a crap ton of fluid down. And I'm just going to pull this fluid. I'm just going to keep picking up huge blobs of fluid and pulling it around this base. And I never want to get to the point where I am, like, not leaving a big blob of fluid behind. If you are just seeing, like, a brush stroke, like normal, you do not have enough wash on your brush. Not even close. You should be painting with puddles. Paint with puddles on washes, always. And remember, you can let this pool and you don't have to wick it off. Now it's going to naturally pool and kind of puddle in areas which are lower and in cracks, and that's fine. You can pull some of that off if it's unsightly. All right. Just checking to make sure I've got it all, more or less. Yep. So what I wanted was essentially see there's some very nice faint lines now that are outlining that. Now I can take some extra black in if I want and kind of paint like more of the insides of some of these bricks. Or I can do my, I'll probably do I'm going to wick off some extra fluid that's pooled back here. Maybe I'll do my veining next. Just plain ones. So you like the trim at the bottom. I don't. I just want the plain plinth, and I want it in either black. I do agree with you on the black, though. Black or dark brown. Dark brown is actually my favorite. I don't think I've got an example. No, I don't. But I really love a nice dark brown because it's a nice neutral color. Now we're going to get out colors to do the veining while we wait for that to dry, and I'm going to be using the same things we did to highlight the red on our dragonkin. So I'm going to be using blood red, then I'm going to be using magma to bring that up a little bit. Just want to do like almost like volcanic veins almost, but not really, just something understated. We'll see if I can manage to make it work. We're going to do underpainting it in white, of course, because putting any red over black is just a recipe for disaster and frustration. And I need my pure white, which went running away apparently over here. We are not traveling anywhere except down to up to the city for Kublai Khan. And even I am not doing much of that. I will be streaming tomorrow, just so you guys know, since I'm not going to the con, except in the evening. David will be down there, so I'll just stream. So we need some white, then I'll get some blood red out and magma red. I want my white to be pretty thin this time. I'm gonna do a 2-to-1 just to start with, but I may add another drop of water. We'll see. I want my lines to be really thin. Oh, this is another example of how thin lines help you. I just shot that video yesterday on how to paint really thin lines. It talks about the proper paint consistency, the colors that work the best, the type of brush, how exactly you should load your brush, and some tips if you don't have a super suitable brush for the technique. And then it goes over some examples of, or in the beginning it goes over some examples of why this technique is useful. So that I should be edited today, and I'll have it out. If you are at the $10 tier or above on my Patreon, you will get that later. That's probably all you'll do, yeah. I made roast beef hash out of tri-tip last night. We had leftover tri-tip. It was pretty good. Just blowing on this to get it dry. Now, one thing you can get is you may end up with somewhat of a sheen on your base from the sealer. I actually kind of want a little bit of a sheen on the base, so I'm not going to kill it. If you didn't want this sheen, then the best thing to do is just to glaze either some of your carbon gray or your black, right? I probably would do the black right over the top, a really thin glaze. And essentially the normal matte covering of MSP will dull the shine. The shine exists just because my bottle is getting really low. I know I didn't stick, when it gets really low, there's always matting agent C that sticks in the bottom no matter how much you shake it up. So if I had really been smart or really had wanted matte, I would have stirred the rest of this in. But instead I put it just on, and so it tends to be a little bit glossy, which can be a pro. On marble, on stonework, I think this actually works a little bit. I may dull it at the end because we've got NMM on the model, and so anything shiny, remember, is going to make the NMM look like it doesn't, like it's fake. So... Cool, Theresith, welcome. Yeah, I was the staff painter for Reaper Miniatures, and I also made their paint line for 17 years. Now I just do streaming for them. So this is Reaper's stream. It's our morning pro tip stream. We do a bunch of different stuff. We do a different model every day. We have a 6-model rotation. So when we get to the end of the rotation, we just loop back around go back to the front. We're doing some cool stuff. We do some standard, what I'll call kind of standard, painting miniatures kind of stuff. That's another one that we worked on earlier this week. But then we also do some really funky stuff, like with art techniques, where I'm doing this directed lighting on this guy that we're working on. And then we're also doing that kind of an underpinning technique with this halfling, where we're just starting to color him in, where we're implying that there's an energy attack coming at him, so the light is coming from that direction. So I do both more simple and more complex stuff. But you're welcome. And if you have any questions, even no matter how simple you may feel they are, no matter how beginner they are, ask. Because I've spent 2 decades teaching beginners. So, and I still remember what it was like to struggle with this stuff when I was just learning. So I feel it. So we have people of all levels who watch this stream. All right, so now I'm gonna do some veining. I'm gonna freehand this. Using a sponge when it's a small area like this and around the feet of the model and all that, I think is pretty fraught. And often I find that I can freehand just fine. So really the cool thing about freehanding marble veins is that you really don't need to keep them straight, right? You don't want them to be straight. So you're just letting your brush kind of wobble over the surface as much as you need to. And I'm going to bring them down over here. Bring one over here. And I'm just going to kind of bring them over and through a bunch of stones. So little white veins like that. And I'll make it stronger at where the lines intersect. So I'll paint a little bit of extra white there. But yeah, so really little paint on my brush here, because if you've got too much paint, that's the biggest fail. Like, you're gonna see really big puddles, and that's not gonna give you the thin lines you want. You can still work with those puddles. Like, if I had that problem, I might let it all dry until it gets all those funky shapes, and then I would work with the shapes that are revealed by that randomness. But in general, I like to have a little bit more control, so... Rinse out my brush and reload. Once the paint starts not wanting to come off your brush, you need to either reload if your paint is thinner, or you might need to put more water into your paint if your paint is thicker. So I'm going to reload and unload. Take the excess paint off the brush. You can see how thin these lines are, but that's fine. Like, I'd rather have it thin. I can always make the line thicker. It's more of a pain to thin out lines that are thick that you didn't want that way. Just get some of those veins back there. So what we're trying to do, Thera, Sith, so you know, since I did this Dragonborn Paladin as kind of a, I imagined her as a Paladin of Pele, so a volcano god. So that's what the big lava hammer is about. I've got some like fiery veins going on in the shield. So because of that, I decided I wanted to do this more like a black marble with like red or lava veins running through it. Hey, Boombox, thanks for the raid. So that's why we're doing just a little bit of this underpainting. And the reason that I'm using white for this right now is that if I tried to put my red orange, my bright red orange over this black, it wouldn't work well at all, because it just red is more translucent, so is orange. So over black, you just wouldn't see it. It wouldn't be bright, right? It certainly wouldn't look fiery. So what you do then is you underpaint, which is you put down a layer of your design in white first. And then you can put the red and orange over it, and it'll look just fine. So I'm kind of having the veins like kind of meet around here. I like that. And these are it's just like drawing rivers. Like, imagine rivers on a map. You're drawing rivers. It's just eventually it'll be rivers of lava. And I might connect up that one. Hey, Daffodware. I want to extend that back here. But yeah, so the key here is just keeping these thinner. If they were really thick and chunky, it wouldn't look as good. And it would also risk being really distracting to the eye. Because if you have all this really loud, bright red orange down lower on the model, that's where the eye is going to want to look. There we go. That's what that looks like. I'm going to pop one of these over here. And you don't want to do terribly straight lines because you want it to look erratic. On a river or a lava flow flows, it follows features of the land, right? So that's why it's kind of wobbly. There we go. So that's looking okay. Now I'm going to go around and make some of these. I'm going to take a slightly thicker white, or I'm going to add a little bit of white to my mixture now that I've got my veins started. And I'm going to drop a little bit more into my mix. So my mix of white right now is very big and puddly and thin. Oh, my white is almost gone. There we go. 2 drops in. So now it's going to be more like a 3-to-1 paint to water. It's going to get a little thicker. It's not going to be as good for thin lines, but it's going to be okay to thicken out the places where the lines meet on the model space. Now probably I'll do all this and it's going to look really bright, and then I'll do the glaze over the top with black to dull it down just a little bit. I might actually use walnut for that glaze, or even brown liner. We'll see. Maybe walnut to give it kind of a brown. Because sometimes when you put, so we're thickening up these connecting points. Sometimes when you put black over red, it'll go more purple, and I don't necessarily want that with this. I should be able to avoid that by using magma red for my, because it's an orangey red, but so I'm just going to thicken up the little places where the lines meet, wherever they do. Make those a little bit brighter. This is how you do lightning too, by the way. You want to thicken the connection points and make them brighter than the surrounding. So you can see how that starts looking, which is really cool. Yeah, the model will start on rotation after this one. We should finish this one today. Will be the half-orc rogue. So she'll be next. And she's a 3D print. I have to clean her up a little bit still. You can see she's got some little printing stuff on her that I need to remove. It's a good sculpt though. Her eyes are small, but yeah, she does have a great face. Yeah, we haven't painted a half-orc since our half-orc mage that I actually kept because I liked her a lot. So it'll be a fun one to do. Now you'll notice as I paint, my paint has wicked up my brush all the way to the ferrule. And that can be a brush wrecker. So you want to keep an eye when you're using really thin paint like this, if you're reloading and reloading and you're not rinsing your brush frequently, then you're going to run the risk that your brush is going to get, you can see it actually, see that little bit of white down there? That means that the paint is seeping into here and it's going to dry and it could cause my brush to lose its tip. So we'll want to use a brush cleaner on this brush. This is my old beat up DaVinci Maestro, by the way. It's ancient and it's almost on its last legs anyway, but it's very thin, and so it does really good thin lines. So that's why we whipped this one out. Where's a connection? Do I have any other connections here? No, not really. Oh, maybe, nope. Nope, everything else, this looks pretty good. It makes me think like, I'm just looking composition wise. Do I think that works okay? I think it might, I'm trying to make the judgment call between symmetry or no symmetry. I think I'm going to just accentuate the rest of these where I need them, and then I'll make that call. Because I was thinking I maybe needed something more down here, like another one of these bright spots, but I don't know that's true. I have to put everything in and then make that call. Yeah, you can get around that, and usually I don't have to clean my brushes at all. But that's because I'm a compulsive rinser. Whenever I notice the paint creeping up, on my brush, I go to rinse right away. This is just such an old brush that it's finally catching up to it. But normally most of my brushes get through their lives without being cleaned once. When in doubt, I always rinse. All right, so let's go and get this little vein back here, right there. Try to keep my camera and my mini so that you guys can see it. So really I'm just thickening up and making it a bit more white, which is why I thickened the paint. So now when I look at this, I like it a little bit better. I still feel like there might be something that I could do, maybe like right here. I'll brighten it up a bit, as if we're about to fork another piece of marble. Yeah, like that. There we go. Perfect. Compositionally. You got to watch out when you're trying to judge composition on stuff like this, because your eye will want symmetry, but the best like compositions don't give you symmetry. So here I'm like, I wanted to put something there because I had something down here, but I made it a little bit more forward, and I made it only a tiny little bit where we've got a big branch here, and these are not symmetrical. So overall, I feel like we've succeeded in not putting too much symmetry on the model. Because when you're trying to do something randomized, like a marble vein or a lava vein or what have you, then making things too symmetrical can really just look bad. Like it just doesn't look real at that point. It doesn't look like what you want it to look like. It was super funny when we went to the dive bar just down the street from our CrossFit gym last night to say goodbye to Stephanie, who's going back to France, one of our classmates. It was so funny. Honestly, I felt like I'd walked into the D&D tavern scene where you know, you walk in and everybody looks up because there are strangers around these parts, right? That was totally like we invaded because there were like 15 of us in this little bar. And we ended up like going out to the back patio, and people would periodically come out and they would give us this affronted look, like we had invaded their space. Like they're used to like being out there like totally on their lonesomes. It was very funny, and it just reminded me of that. It's like humans get so used to their you know their own like private things and their territory things, and we got more looks last night than we have gotten before. Like, how dare you come to our bar? Yeah, right. Your social anxiety nightmare. Well, I was on the side of the 15 people, so it wasn't targeted, so I felt fine. Quindy. I mean, we had just as much right to be there as they did. And the great thing is that once they found out that we were a fitness club, are you part of that fitness club? Yeah. They all disappeared. Because I think, like, one of the things, like, with some
I don't know if it was that, being very unfit, they were like, not even wanting to be like in the vicinity of people who were like, even though, some of us are not, like, I'm definitely not like skinny. I don't look like I do CrossFit 3 days a week. And most of my, actually, I'd say almost all of the people in our class like look like just normal people, like they're not like over the top. Yeah, scare them away with the physical fitness stuff. Well, it's like I don't drink, right? And I noticed when I was standing at the bar getting my hoppy water that that like people were like justifying, like Andrew and I were both non-drinkers, and we were chatting with a guy there who is actually from Texas, um but it's like they felt like they had to justify their drinking because we were not drinking. But it's weird, like they shouldn't have to, it's like, obviously you're at a bar, you're drinking, it's okay, I'm not judging you. So I don't know if it was like that with the fitness thing, where obviously many of them were very unfit and I don't know. It was weird. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I can see that after karate tournament. Same kind of thing, right? It's like you're reminding people that exercise is a thing, and they kind of know they should be doing it, but they're not. But they don't want to be reminded about it. So it was just weird. The bar does karaoke on Thursdays, so we stayed for a little bit of that, and it was kind of funny. Like, you can tell that the bar, like most of the people who go there, it is a little dive bar, so it's people who go there are probably like, there's the same people every night, usually. They're like all singing along to every karaoke song. It's funny. All right, so I think that's pretty good. Like, I have more veins on this side than I have on this side. But that's okay, because this side is actually, if we pull back and we look at our composition, this side is actually the more interesting side, right? We've got the dragon. You can see the dragon, you can see the hammer, everything like that. Whereas on this side, all we've got is the shield, and the dragon is blocked. So having a little bit of extra detail down here is not a bad thing at all. And then on the back, you're usually not going to look at much, so we just have a little bit, and that's okay. Seen this happen, but never understood why. Yeah. I'm betting it's half that, like I said, all the same people usually go to that bar, so getting this big group of strangers in just had a weird effect. It would be like being in a class where it was always the same people, if you got used to going to like a painting class or something, a paint club, and then one day you had like half of the people were like this group of strangers from some weird, from somewhere, some other hobby, right? And it would just throw the dynamic. There we go. Yep. I don't know. There's plenty of drinkers there. One of the things Andrew said was that like there are people who show up there and start drinking very early in the day. So there's still a lot of drinkers there, but yeah, I think it's just a social dynamic thing with groups. All right, so I'm going to get some blood red out, and I'm going to put that down, and I'm going to get my magma red and probably some sunrise orange out and see what I can do with that. Where's my blood red? Blood red, where did you go? I put you in a different place. There it is. It's humans. It's human dynamics. Strangers used to be evil for us, Strangers used to be a bad thing in your community. Unless it was just like one or two strangers, right? But in like early human times, if a group of strangers moved in, they probably were not there for happy sake, you know. So I think we still like hold that little bit of that distrust dynamic in our minds. Plus, a lot of our personal like security is belonging in the group. Nope, I don't. I do not. I'm one of the few, Thera. I've been painting it with a well palette. This has very little wells. I want you to notice that, because that's actually why I use it. So this is like a 28 well palette, and I can use a wet palette. I have used a wet palette on stream to paint. I don't enjoy them. The reason is that I tend to use my paint really, really thin. And so on a wet palette, that's just going to like, all the moisture in your mix is just going to get soaked into the sponge instantly. So a wet palette makes it harder to master your paint consistency. It's much harder to keep your paint, like you pretty much have to reload every brush full when I'm painting with a wet palette in order to get the correct amount of water. And when you're trying to do that when you're learning, that makes it really hard for you to master paint consistency because it's always different. Because the point of the wet palette is that it's porous. And that's great because it keeps your paint wet. But at the same time, it also is always, if you've got a really, really wet palette, it's wicking all the water into your paint. If you've got a really dry wet palette, all your moisture is getting wicked down into the sponge. It's very hard to find a balance there. I mean, that membrane is going to be permeable one way or another, right? And sometimes even as you paint, it's going to change. You're going to start out with a lot of water, but if you're in an arid climate, that water is going to evaporate, and then suddenly your paint is thicker and you're having trouble that way. So when I talk to people who are new, I say use both. Get yourself you can get a much smaller version of this well palette. There's like a 12 well one, I think. This one is a big one because I paint a lot. And I do a lot of mixes. But get yourself a small, and the key here is small wells and porcelain or ceramic palette, because the porcelain is much easier to clean up. You can get all the dried paint out of it much easier, and the small wells allow you to control your paint consistency. When you've got there's these big ones that are like flower shaped and the wells are huge, but the problem with that is that there's a lot of surface area then when you mix your paint, and it just evaporates and dries out way too quick. With this thing, I've had this paint since the start of stream, since the start of stream. It's still wet. It's starting to dry now. I can see the edges are starting to get dry. So at that point, I just grab my mixing brush and throw another drop of water into it, kind of around the edges, and mix it up. And as long as I'm kind of aware of that, then I'm going to be able to keep my paint wet through like I've kept it wet through a 4 or 5 hour painting session. And then if you want to preserve your paint in this kind of palette and keep it overnight, it's perfectly feasible. There's a couple different things you can do. I typically just take my water dropper and I'll drop water in all of the wells around it, and I'll put an extra drop in each mix, and then I will put saran wrap, cling wrap over the top. And doing that, I have kept paint good on a project for over 4 days. Like I think I once did, I think 6 days was my record. Usually 4 days, though. I'm starting to get a little bit of skinning and a little bit of like dried paint, kind of trying to want to mix into stuff. So I'll refresh at that point. But it's easy to do it overnight if you just need to work with the same colors the next day or even the next 2 days. The thing that Rhonda does, she's another Reaper painter who streams on this channel. She'll get a big sponge and she'll just get it wet and squeeze it out so it's damp, and she'll put it on top of the palette, and that will keep the paint damp for as long as the sponge stays damp. So that is why, and otherwise, like, I learned on a well, so because there weren't really wet palettes being used in mini painting when I started painting, so I got very accustomed to using the well palette. So now I just teach people how to use the well palette, like, so they can get like they can get the benefit from both kinds of palettes. The two palettes are good for kind of different things, in my opinion. Like, I think that the wet palette really is good for like laying down colors fast and for mixing on the fly. But I think that also a lot of people who come into this hobby are a little bit uncomfortable with mixing at first. So sometimes it's like you'd almost be better off with a well. And you would learn more. What I usually tell people is learn how to do your mixes for like the various techniques on a well palette. because you're going to be able to control like 1 drop paint to 2 drops water. Oh, I need 1 drop paint to 3 drops water for this technique. And unlike with the wet palette, it's going to stay that way. Like I had this at a 2-to-1, then I increased it to a 3-to-1. And because I have a lot of paint and water in this well, it's going to stay that way for at least an hour. Like I'm going to be able to work with it at the consistency I need if I needed it that long. Whereas if it was on a wet palette, most of that water would have already slurped into the sponge. So, anyway. But that's kind of why. I really feel I'm kind of a control freak painter. I really like to have my paint consistency dialed in, and it bothers me when my paint consistency changes. And so the wet palette is very frustrating for me to use. I don't know where I put Dude. I should grab. Maybe Dude's over here. Quindy always likes it when I bring out Dude. There's Dude. Quindy and Kariniko, but Kariniko's not here today because it's Friday. So this is a model. I took a class with Mark Masklins, who's a very well-known European painter. And this was the bust we worked on. But this was all done with a wet palette. So I can paint well with a wet palette. It's just I find that it's harder for me to do it. But everything on this, including like the skin tones and everything, who wouldn't like to see Dude? This is all done. But the thing I found like hard is like the glazing for the skin was a lot more difficult on a wet palette because I had to really mix every single brush full, and so it was definitely like a fight to do that. But yeah, so that's kind of my like short treatise on wet palettes versus well palettes, and really what you should do is try both and see which ones you enjoy using the most. But I really do feel like having both in your arsenal is good. Yeah, Mark's all about texture, so the class was pretty much all about texture. So the leather texture and the wool texture and the sweater texture, which is the sweater's totally smooth. But yeah, so can I use a wet palette? Sure. Does it kind of stress me out? Yeah. Yeah, it does. There we go. Dude, you're back in your box. All right. Bye, Gosu. Yeah, it is. It's hardly sculpted on there, but it's just layered with stipples. It's actually it's a cool technique. I don't finish my class models usually, and that's for a reason. I like to see the stages in progress so that when I need to remember how to do that technique and the brushstrokes that went into it, I can see the work. So David tends to finish his class models. I tend to not, because I like to see the work in progress. I finished the Kirill model because I wanted to enter it at KublaCon a few years ago. And I almost regret doing it. I don't know. Mr. Grumpy didn't need much more to finish him, so it's probably just good that I did. And I still can see, like, with Mr. Grumpy, I can still see, like, enough brush marks to know what I did. But yeah, the Swiftie that David painted is Mark's new class model. He was just getting her done when he did our class, so she wasn't ready to be used yet. Oh, that was way too much magma red. I did not need that much magma red. Nobody needs that much magma red. That's a lot. That's all right. We'll figure it out. And then I'm going to get Sunrise Orange out. I don't want to bring up these lava veins too much, but I'll put orange in the... Oh, I'm actually really low on Sunrise. I should check that I have Sunrise Orange. There. I've got quite the list of paints I need to order. If you didn't sleep well, Twisted Dome, I would expect the fingers to be shaky. I have shaky fingers on days when I didn't sleep well. Are they like 30 each, guys? The classes at ReaperCon? A bunch of you already got classes. 30, 35, 40, something. Shout it out if you know. $25. All right. Excellent. Cheaper than I thought. But some of them are a little more, right? If it's a famous instructor, I think the class goes up, the price goes up. 20 to 35. There we go. Green users. So yeah, so if you're taking a class from like somebody who's really well known, then you might have to pay a little bit on the upper side of that, but average is 25. Oh, smaller classes and price goes up. That's right. Okay, max students in mind in the 25. So I would always, if I was teaching, it would always be 35 because I do small classes. Oh, and there are some free classes. There we go. That's great to know. I'm going to actually, because my orange is so transparent, I'm going to actually put some white into it. And you'll notice it doesn't change the color a lot, but what it's going to do is add coverage. So now you can't see that paint fall off the edge nearly as much, see? So just adding a little bit of white can give you roughly the same color with more coverage. The free ones are lectures. Okay, that makes sense. Maybe I should just offer to do a free color theory lecture. Maybe that should just be what I do. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what works for the current Anne. You just never know what works for the current Anne. So I'm going to start with like the blood red and just kind of like do some of these veins. Painting over the white. I'm going to grab some magma. I might want magma instead because it's more orangey. And I think it's going to have a little more punch. Whereas the blood red is a little cooler and I think it might go pinker. That's okay. Yeah, I think I want the magma red after testing the two. The blood red goes just a little bit pink and this stays more, it's more in the orange range, so it doesn't immediately go that way. So as we put this red over, it's going to become a lot more understated, right? Which we want. We don't want it to be distracting from our dragon. Lecture discussion, yeah. Cool. Thanks, everybody, for answering the questions. And, seriously, just in case you missed it, although we always discuss it, so I don't know how you could miss it, plan for, I would say, no more than 6 classes. You don't know how many classes you're going to get. So you might end up with only 4 or 5 or 3. I would not go over 6. I think 6 is too many myself. You might be able to do 2 classes on Thursday and Friday, though, if you really... I'm going to put this magma over everything, guys, and then I'm going to come back and lighten up those big cruxes again. But people get so burned out because they try to take too many classes. And then they end up not showing up for classes later on in the con. So keep in mind your general energy level and also how much you're likely to be able to absorb. I usually advise people to look at the classes that will be the most valuable for them based on like projects they know they want to work on in the coming year. and try to get those. Because some of the classes, it's going to be like a kid in a candy shop. You're going to be like, oh, that sounds like such a cool class. I want to take it. But when you have a limited amount of time to snatch classes, you probably just want to aim for the stuff that you really need first. It did take a little while for classes to sell out this time. I know some classes sold out right away, like my husband's advanced highlighting and shading class sold out right away. So, but there was a little more time. It seemed like, because we were kind of following it here in the stream when they went on, it seemed like there was a little more time this year to get classes. Yeah, and also, like, most of the space is open painting in the big hall. So there's also a lot of time to sit and practice what you learned seriously and to meet people. We have a good gang. All right, so we can see how this kind of takes it down a bit. We can go back a bit. So now it's understated. That's what I wanted. I wanted something that was, yeah. So I wanted something that wasn't going to be too distracting, but that would kind of decorate the base a bit. And I'm going to go in and do some highlights on the black stone as well, but I wanted to get all this veining in first. Otherwise, I'd just be spending a lot of time covering up the highlights. So it depends, right? It's going to be easier if your brush control is not as good. It might be easier to highlight all the stone and then to put the veining in. But then you run into the problem where if you screw up, you're going to be painting over it, and you're just going to end up like doing the work twice or three times. So for me, I'm just doing it this way to set it up. And then I'll do highlights. And what I'll likely do, like I said, I'm going to be doing like a black glaze over this too. So once I have these veins in, I'll do the glaze. And then I'm going to probably brighten up those joining points a bit more after I put that, because the glaze will dull down the veins just a little bit. I thought we were going to finish this faster, but because I decided to do all this elaborate stuff, it's taking longer. Whenever you introduce kind of a freehand element, it can start to suck up your time. It doesn't, the nice thing about doing this kind of pattern over black though is I don't really have to actually, when I'm glazing this orange over the top of these white lines, it doesn't matter if I get it on the black on either side. It's not going to show up because the red orange is just not going to show up against the black. So you don't have to be precise. You have to be precise when you place the lines, but not when you're doing your glazing. I'm going to throw the model around now because it's Friday. It's that kind of day. But yeah, it would be good to meet you there. Seriously. It's the one con that I will always like go to unless there's something weird. Like when we got Kiki, I had to stay home for a year. It was the only year of ReaperCon I ever missed. And it's your fault, little dog. Little dog's lying on the floor right here. By little dog, I mean giant monstrous dog. She must like the fact that I have the window open and there's a cool breeze coming through. Normally she'd be out in the other room. Yeah, you hanging out, Keeks? Are you going to get to be by like Kiri after all, where you come and hang out while I stream? That would be nice. I used to like that. Kiri would always come and plop down on her cushion next to me while I streamed. Then I just gotta teach you to squeak the ball like Kiri did at the start of every stream. Alrighty. There we go. So we got all our veins. Those look cool. Really cool. Yeah. Well, it's cool that you're planning. Seriously, cool. And that makes it real when you actually put a plan behind it, when you figure out your budget and how much you have to put aside to make it work. That all makes it real. It's great. Alrighty, so nice veiny. Now let's do our quick black glaze. So I can use my black wash from earlier. It's got a lot of medium in it, sealer, but I can still use it, much as I don't like using it when there's like sealer normally. I want it to be colored water, just like this, see-through. I just want a thin layer. Oh wait, no, I don't want to use that. Sorry, because it has that glaze in it, and I want it to actually be duller. Oh, where's my black? Black, where are you? Where'd you go? I put you over here. Hey, crows. Yeah, it's a paint-oriented con for sure. So I'm going to put a puddle. I'm going to put a spot of black up here. I don't need very much black. I just need enough to glaze over this. So I don't like putting medium in my glazes usually. I just use water. You want to mix this up. This is way too... You can see how high coverage black is, that I can use that tiny of a blob of paint and that, you know, and that much water, and it's still so thick. It's way too thick. And another thing I like about the well palette is that I can just watch how it looks, how it drains off the side here, to give me a clue as to how dark or light my glaze is. A little more water. Now we're getting closer. That's going to put... That might be okay, actually. Still, like, really... It's quite dark, though. I mean, probably either the dark blue or the medium blue. Sagebrush. I like to start blues with the medium blue and work down these days, because otherwise you leave brush strokes too readily. I'm going to use this and see how it works. But blue's a devil. If you don't start light, if you don't start with a color that at least has some white in it, getting them to blend is going to be really, really difficult. So I'm going to put this glaze, and unlike the wash, I'm going to be brushing this over the surface really thinly. I just want a very thin coat. And mostly this is for two reasons. I'm doing this. One, to knock down the finish that was left behind by the wash, so it's not as glossy. Once it dries, it should be a lot better, a lot more matte. And two, when you're doing any sort of veining, if you can do a wash over the top of it, it tends to make the veins look more like they're inside of the stone. But yeah, so I guess sagebrush, like, I would almost always do a darker wash. Like, this is the deal. Okay. Let's actually give our full attention to Sagebrush's question. Okay, I wouldn't do a wash to blend layers, first of all. I would do a glaze. The difference between the wash and the glaze is that on the wash, you're using some sort of medium and you want it to dry in the cracks. On a glaze, you're just trying to change the color slightly, like I just did, or the finish. And you're just looking to really thin it down to the point where you actually break the paint and get those little watermark lines on the outside edges. So you would never use paint this thin as a wash because it would dry on the surfaces instead of in the cracks because you've broken it. You can tell from those little lines forming around the edges. Whereas a wash is going to be a lot more solid. It's going to stick in the edges. Notice that it's not tea staining. It's not water staining around the edges down here. This is because I have a lot of brush-on sealer in that mix. A wash is thicker. A glaze is thinner. A glaze is to blend. A wash is to bring out details. Does that make sense? So less glossy now. Still a little bit. I might use one more layer, since that didn't really affect my veins. Yeah, so I wouldn't use a wash to blend layers. I would use a glaze. If I did a wash for anything, it would always be a darker wash because a wash is always going to settle in the cracks, which usually you want that to be darker. But a glaze is what you really want to use. The easiest color to glaze with between a medium and a dark blue is going to be the dark blue because it's going to be more transparent. I'm going to do one more layer. I took down that sheen a little bit. I want to do it a little bit more. And again, just kind of like doing a really thin layer. I'm just brushing it over the top. Just a couple different ways to apply a glaze. You can see both of them on my YouTube, on my Fundamentals of Miniature Painting videos. If you go to glazing, I go into it at length. Yeah, there's some gaming, it's not as much of a focus as it is with a lot of other cons. The vendor hall is great because it's almost all miniatures oriented. We have a small vendor hall, but it is mighty. So now to put the orange in, I'm going to try to just take my sunrise orange and I'm going to try to just put that into these cracks and see if I can liven them up just a little bit. Which works. So I'm going to just keep using this orange and not use some white under it. Thanks, Cruz. I'm glad you like it. Sometimes if I need a color that doesn't otherwise cover, I'll actually kind of stipple it on to make sure that the coat that goes on is thicker. Yeah, Reesboro used to help with that. I don't know if we're able to do that anymore now that con is larger. Like they used to make their UPS shipping depot. Available. But I don't know if they've done that for years, so don't go on my knowledge. My knowledge is almost always out of date. So I'm going to bring up the orange in those little cracks. But yeah. Bye, Crowley. Have a good weekend. Again, I'm just going to put a little bit of orange in the middle of all of these. We're just going to keep going until we finish this sucker. So the black glaze knocked this down a little bit, but that's fine. It makes the veining a little bit more subtle, which I tend to like. My goal is not to distract you from the dragon, but just to give you a little bit of something extra to look at. Alrighty. So the addition of the orange in there helps make things stand out. Just a little bit. See, now it was really loud and now it's like much more subtle, but it looks like little embers on the base, which is what I wanted. And now I can do a little bit of highlighting on the black stones and I'm good. But it helps, it pulls that orange and red down into the base and really makes your eye move around the model. And it gives the base just a little bit of extra dressiness. They did still do a shipping thing last year, but don't know about this year. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we should ask John. All right, I'm gonna grab my carbon gray, which at this point has been dulled down by a lot of extra black glazes and looks really black. Though if you look at it, you can still see the gray underneath, and you can see that the cracks are darker. So we'll just do a little bit of highlighting here. I don't know if I want to do a lot, honestly. It looks good by itself, like. I'll put some touches of gray to bring out the stones a little bit more, but I feel like it's pretty good because I really do want it to look more black and to be dull, except for the fiery bits. So I'm just brushing over the gray a little bit on some of these stones that are more black. And it's thinned gray, so it's not like gonna jump out at you. So now you can see the gray coming out, and that looks cool. There we go. And that's still really understated, that gray. So, like, if I really wanted to, I could grab some of that gray, mix it with my white, and do some lining around the edges of these. But if I did, the problem with that is when you do that, when you start putting more highlights onto this, you lose that great fiery vein effect. So that's why I wouldn't do it. Like, if I wanted to do nicely outlined, you know, flagstones and bring up my gray edges and all that, I wouldn't have done all this cool veining. But I want it to kind of look cool and magical and, like, she's in the temple of her goddess or something. So I feel like this is good. What do you guys think? Yeah, very different color scheme from anything we've done before. But it's David's favorite. Oh, I did forget to put some orange over here on these little scales. There we go. Alrighty, so next time we get to this point in the rotation, I'll have all these 3D supports off of Ms. Orc, half orc, and we can progress forward, figuring out what she's going to be like. I have some ideas. For her. I think she might be a purple-green color scheme. But we shall see. I need to pull the dragon off her base and sign her underneath. She's actually one of the finished ones. We have many models we need to finish basing on. Let me just use the gray that I just mixed up because it's fairly thick. I have been doing this signature for like 30 years, folks. I remember when I was doing 90 something. Alrighty, we have dragon. I see a little speck on that horn I have to clean up. Alrighty, yay dragon. Alright, cool. Thanks everybody. When we come back on Monday, we will be working on the Halfling of Doom. Where we are just starting to glaze some colors into his person. Oh, Memorial Day. Sorry, not Monday. On Tuesday. Thanks, Quindy. We are not streaming Monday. Sorry. Yes. What Quindy said. She is wiser than I. So y'all have to come back on Tuesday to see Mr. Halfling. All right? Thank you all for attending the stream. Oh, I have yawns. So yawns. Oh, the wind is picking up. I need to go and lower my umbrella. All right. Have a good one, everybody. I will be, yes, not wash. The only reason to wash, okay, let's just do this sagebrush. Okay, washing is if I want to add shadows, like bring out details. That's what washing is for, bringing out details. But here, I'm adding colors. I'm not trying to bring out details. I already have all these details painted in with the underpainting. So, I don't need a wash, I need a glaze. Because I don't want, the other thing is I don't want super strong paint, because it'll cover up all my underpainting. So that's why you glaze when you're doing this kind of underpainting. Does that make sense? Like, it's purpose driven. The purpose of the two is very different. Yeah. We can go into that a little bit more on Tuesday. Alrighty, cool. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Quindy. Quindy, you gonna be home tomorrow? You gonna be like streaming with me? Yes, awesome. I will see you then. All right, thanks, everybody. I will see some of you tomorrow. I will see some of you Tuesday. No matter what, I hope you all have a great holiday weekend if you're here in the States. All right, bye-bye.